It's Waxing Lyrical Baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical Mainz and Dutts. I'm your host, Mainz. My colleague, unsure if he wants a Hollywood handshake or a DM from Adam Levine, it's Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
Handshake.
You know when you're like, now, when it, like, how Twitter exists, is you're like, oh, you'll have a look, and then every now and again you'll go into trending, and you'll go, oh, why is that? And you'll click on it, and you'll go, oh, I shouldn't have clicked on that. My one today was Adam Levine.
Yeah. It's there are dark holes and rabbit holes that we don't want to go down in life, and unfortunately, Twitter throws them at us on a daily basis.
Yeah, what I would say is Adam Levine is married to a supermodel, and Gerald Piqué is married to Shakira, and both of them thought it upon themselves to cheat on those people, and therefore men are scum.
Always remember.
Welcome to my TED Talk.
Yeah, Chris Rock once said, "A man is only as faithful as his options."
It's outrageous.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Which I consider a personal attack, but then I remembered I'm a deeply ugly man.
Let's move on. This week, we're going to look at 0-2 and 2-0 teams in the main event to make sure we can understand where we are. Are we high on these teams or low on these teams? There's also 3 backup QBs, or they were backup QBs at the start of the season, making some noise in these early weeks of the season. We'll see what they're doing. Then Neil will give us fancy darlings, fancy loser, and me and Neil will give you fancy predictions, bound to go wrong, nailing them again as we did last week. He says completely lying. Without further ado, let us get on with the show and let's get into the main event.
Time now for the main event.
Neil, what I thought we'd do this week is look at the 0-2 teams and the 2-0 teams and get some panic meters going. Which teams are you high on, which teams are you low on? So let's start with the 0-2 teams. The 0-2 teams are the Bengals, the Titans, the Raiders, the Panthers, and the Falcons.
Did you know, since the playoffs were expanded, no team starting 0-2 has made the playoffs?
Do you mean last year?
The year before as well.
Last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Do you expect are there any of these teams who you are high on and you think could make a playoff push?
The one I have the most hope for is the Bengals, and that's just because the AFC North has turned into the wild, wild west. Everyone's beating each other or everyone's losing games that they probably should have won. So I think the Bengals, I'd like to think there's elements of it took the Chiefs' offensive line with 4 new starters to gel last season, but eventually they did. I'd like to think there's some element of that because we've gone back to rookie Joe Burrow getting the crap kicked out of him, which I don't think any of us want to see. The Titans look broke. They're just... It's not working. I worry that the cliff we all thought Derrick Henry was never going to fall off, he's fallen off it, and Ryan Tannehill's turned into a pumpkin. The Panthers on offense, everything just looks so hard. There's nothing easy, and this is supposed to be, this team has more. Put this way, would you rather have the Green Bay wide receivers or the Panthers wide receivers?
Well, I'd rather have the Panthers wide receivers because, they've got some. They've
got some. But it just everything looks messy and bunched up, and it just looks awful. The Falcons are playing hard, but their head coach says, we're trying to win games, not score fantasy points. Oi, dickhead, give it to the tight end. He might score you some points that help fantasy and you. You don't take a tight end 4th overall, brackets, you shouldn't do it anyway, to then have him pass block.
That is, of the stupid comments of the early part of the season, that is the stupidest one. I'm not here to have fantasy, to help fantasy teams. I'm here to win games, when the way you win games is giving it to your most talented players on offense, of which Kyle Pitts is one, if not the one. So, back in your box, billionaire Ted. Let's not be stupid here. I think.
Do you know the? Sorry, just to interrupt quickly. The Falcons who haven't won a game, had a chance to at least tie and maybe force a surprise win against the Rams, because their quarterback thought he would throw to Brian Edwards and Olamide Zaccheaus on one side while Jalen Ramsey was lurking, while Kyle Pitts is one-on-one on the other side. So I would argue, Arthur, that you're not trying to win games or help fantasy managers. So, what is it you say you do here, Doc Giff?
What is it you do here, meme? I think the only team we haven't talked about in those five, Neil, is the Las Vegas Raiders, who played tough against the LA Chargers and then completely and utterly capitulated against the Arizona Cardinals. Although they did choke, and I think that's fair, but also sometimes you just get done by that type of quarterback. The 85-yard, 28-minute play that Kyler Murray does on the 2-point conversion is, Madden-esque. And,
still running now.
The amount of controls I would have smashed if that was a game and the computer did that to me would be outrageous. I think they're reasonably talented. I think they got issues on defense, but I think they had issues on defense last year. Carr has to push the ball down the field. He has to not be afraid to throw an interception. I think sometimes he's too conservative with that kind of play. If he's not, I think they win games. I think the answer to the team you're most high on of these is the Bengals. Mainly because we know they did it last year. They only had the same record as the Raiders, I guess. But I do wonder if they've given Joe Burrow too much to do. He seems to be calling plays in the huddle after being given them and calling protections. And if he's calling protections, he should be fired because he's really bad at that. Now, to be fair to them, they have played a Bosa and a Micah Parsons in the first 2 weeks. The Jets are not that team, so they should be okay.
You mean a Watt, not a Bosa?
A Watt, sorry, yeah, TJ Watt, yeah, sorry. Got brothers mixed up, yeah, they thought TJ Watt, of course they did.
One thing that might help the Las Vegas Raiders is maybe if you're going to have Mac Hollins run the same number of routes as Devontae Adams, don't. And feed Devontae Adams.
Which the thing I find strange is they did that in week one. Especially the first half. I text you in the first half of that first game. Look, Devontae Adams is going to get 700 catches this year. So I don't really know how you get away from that.
You can't ignore Mac Hollins for long, though,
No, I guess. I mean, you've got Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller, and yeah, I mean, that just reeks of I'm smarter than you head coach nonsense from Josh McDaniels. Do you know what I mean? It's the same kind of I'm not here to win. Yeah. I'm not here to win your fantasy league. Yeah, I know.
Let's be honest. Who amongst us thought that Josh McDaniels might have a "I'm smarter than you" complex? Fair.
The team the team that I would be smashing panic buttons about in the 0-2 stage is got to be the Carolina Panthers, right? As you said, it's just so difficult. I think sometimes you watch of teams like the Chiefs or the Chiefs, or you watch the Lions last week in the first half. Even what Philadelphia against, and the offense just looks so easy. 10 yards comes, you're not even thinking about it. There's a 40-yard play there. It just happened. Then there's you watch, I had Panthers. I saw quite more than most people should be allowed to watch of Panthers Giants on Sunday, and I also watched basically all of Steelers Patriots. They were two of the greatest pillow fights I've ever seen. They were trying to attack each other with a blunt spoon. Do you know, that Panthers, they have talent, it's there. I've seen all of those players be good at one time or another, and they can't move the ball, and they're not playing, the 86 Bears defense. They're just not capable of moving the ball, and I don't really know why. Well, I do. It's poor coaching, and they will all be fired.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the 2-0 teams, which are Miami, Buffalo, Kansas City, Philadelphia, the New York Football Giants, as we all expected, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Let's start with who you're lowest on of them, Neil, and why is it the New York Giants?
Because their offense looks worse than the Panthers one. Literally, they're leading the league in alienating wide receivers on their roster. They are, setting the pace with that regard. And sometimes they say, you can win because of a quarterback, you can win with a quarterback, and sometimes you win despite your quarterback. That's the New York Giants, because they are just so desperate for Daniel Jones not to hurt them. But he looks like he's going to whenever he drops back. Their defense has been spunky, should we say? Saquon Barkley didn't have a massive game in week 2, but he looks like, this is the Saquon we knew and loved. But the first time they come up against a proper defense, which, to be fair, they came up against one last week, but they had an even more misfiring QB on the other side. As soon as they come up against a proper defense, they're going to get the clock cleaned. The dream scenario, of course, for anyone who loves chaos and, enjoys seeing people fall on their face, would be for the Giants to start 4-0, drop a bunch of games, have a late season rally, finish 6-11, and play themselves out of getting one of the quarterbacks in the draft.
There is, for Neil to say that 4-0, the next game is against the Cooper Rush-inspired Dallas Cowboys, we will more of later, and then the Chicago Bears. So 4-0 is not beyond the realms of possibility. They will be favoured, and they are favoured in the Dallas game, and they will be favoured against Chicago. So that situation is true. Speaking of teams who are making hard work on offense, but this time winning games rather than losing them, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are painful to watch on offense. I have a question. We always laugh when Jerry Jones is on the sideline, right?
Mm-hmm.
Arthur Blank on the sideline, that's hilarious. Why is former coach Bruce Arians on the sideline having a fight with Marcus Lattimore?
Don't understand that at all. Bruce, what are you doing here? You should be at golf. This has nothing to do with you.
My favourite part of the Lattimore-Evans fight was the lip sync, or the lip reading that read, like, it's Tom Brady, what else was I supposed to do? When after Mike Evans had punched Marcus Lattimore. They're struggling on offense. They are really good on defense, though. Although, speaking of two teams who may struggle to score points this week, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers play the Green Bay Packers, who today didn't have Alan Lazard, Christian Watson, and Randall Cobb, although less, practicing. So good luck to whoever's going to get side-eyed by Aaron Rodgers when they don't run that Devontae Adams route.
Please run the wishbone. Please.
Just got to. To
be fair, the Seahawks did have 4 running backs on the field for a play last week, and one of them threw an interception. It was truly one of the worst plays I've ever seen. From the second the ball was snapped, it was like, whoever wins, we all lose right now.
That game was the definition of after the Lord Mayor's show from the Seattle Seahawks. Well in Pete. Neil, right now, would you take Buffalo or Kansas City?
I have to take Buffalo. I don't think... I'm not just besmirching the Kansas City Chiefs in any stretch of imagination. They're 2-0 and have played very well. The Bills are on another level at the moment because they are literally... They're playing the slowest pace of any team in the league. They are literally crawling up to the line and are beating the tar out of two good teams. You know, the Super Bowl winners and the number one AFC seed last year. We don't think they're any good, but they were the number one seed. They are, they're beating teams up on both sides of the ball. The Chiefs, I think the Chargers should have had them.
Agreed.
Whereas I don't think the Bills. The Bills are making a few mistakes, but teams aren't cashing in on them. It's what happened last week. The Chargers made a mistake against the Chiefs, and the Chiefs pulled them on it. No one at the moment is making the Bills pay for their mistakes, and until someone does, I can't look past them.
I think my only fear for the Buffalo Bills is it's week 2, right? I don't think you need to be in playoff form in week 2. We'll see if they can continue it. I hope they do, because they are really exciting to watch, and we need more people going through tables or getting covered in hot dog sauce. Second question, Neil. 3 backup QBs making some noise last week, and I guess the question is, what next for them? So the first one, obviously, is San Francisco 49ers. Terrible situation with Trey Lance. Breaks his leg, out for the year. And Jimmy G comes in because that's why they kept him. Obviously, that's not why they kept him, just so everyone knows. I assume you're with me in thinking that the San Francisco 49ers are better in 2022 with Jimmy G at their quarterback than they would have been with Trey Lance. But now they have some major questions to answer long term, as their starting quarterback, who they traded up for and took with the 3rd pick, has thrown it about 4 times in 4 years.
The 2022 San Francisco 49ers have a higher floor,
but
probably a lower ceiling. Moving forward, I say 2023, you cannot tell me that Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, the 49ers brass know what they've got in Trey Lance, because they won't have. As you say, he hasn't played, and next year is going to be the make or break year, because if that's after, you have to start making the decision on the 5th year option. So heart bleeds to the lad, it really does. But you can argue that their roster is talented enough that, as I say, if they have the flat line that Jimmy Garoppolo will give them, they can still compete. Moving forward, that's a problem for the future. They'll worry about that when it comes.
Opposite situation is the New York Jets, who Joe Flacco diced up the Cleveland Browns, and everyone was happy, and kind of shows how much noise it makes when the Jets are good or win a game. The issue is that Joe Flacco's 700, although he's technically 6 years younger than Tom Brady. But right now, seems to have better rapport with all the wide receivers than Zach Wilson. And Zach Wilson is the 1st round draft pick. So Zach's supposed to be back week 4 or 5. Not saying that you stay with Flacco, but there's a major issue in New York around fixing Zach Wilson.
Joe Flacco plays within the structure of the offense. Zach Wilson makes wow plays outside the structure of the offense. When do heroes emerge? When things go wrong. Jimmy Garoppolo is never going to be a hero, because it's his job to make sure things never go wrong. Zach Wilson is the type of quarterback who'll put the team at risk because he's tried to do something daft, and then he has to emerge as the hero. Joe Flacco, at the moment, is executing the offense quite well. So, but the thing is, as well as he is doing, they're going back to Wilson, and that's going to cap everyone. So, I don't know. It's a tough one.
Final one, Neil. Everyone's favourite team, the Dallas Cowboys. I put that on Sunday night against Cincinnati, hoping for a disaster, and then saw a highly competent quarterback throw excellent catchable balls in a very good win. And 2 weeks after the injury, Jerry Jones was quoted as saying, well, when Tony got injured and Dak came in, we won a load of games. It'll just be like that. And I thought, Jerry's an idiot. I mean, he's still an idiot, but can they win games with Cooper Rush?
The test is, can they? They did win one because their defense is good. And we see this with Tampa Bay. The offense is not firing, but their defense is carrying them. The test is going to be when they get into a shootout where they can't rely on the defense and Cooper Rush has to make plays. He's not going to. Come on. It's not going to happen. So, they need an awful lot more out of Ezekiel Elliott than they're getting to make sure that Cooper Rush does not have to take a game over. But come on, no. This is not a Tom Brady, Drew Bledsoe situation.
I didn't think so, but it's always good to do that kind of first take, Skip Bayless nonsense every now and again. That is it for the mains events. Let's get on to the fancy portion of the show and get on with fantasy, darling.
Hello, darling.
Last week, Neil was 1-1, overall 2-2. Picks from last week, he picked Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz was quarterback 5, 337 yards and 3 scores. Carson Wentz's performance on Sunday was the definition of hold your nose fantasy performance. If you watch the game, the team is completely blown out in at least the first half, if not longer, and then they make a comeback behind Wentz. And if you didn't watch the game, you're like, oh, look, Carson Wentz must have played well, and he's the 5th best quarterback. He was not. Neil also picked the Cleveland Browns against the Jets, who we'd just spoken about, and they got diced by Joe Flacco and Garrett Wilson, who on the Wilson scale is excellent. I did text a friend of ours who's a New York Jets fan and asked him if he thought he was better than Jerry Rice right now, and he said yeah. I wouldn't expect anything else from Ian.
Jerry Rice, of course, is just the old Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Correct. Neil, give us your picks this week. Let's start with the first one.
Well, if Carson Wentz is hold your nose fantasy stuff, then what of Jared Goff? Because that's who I'm going with this week. Goff is the quarterback 9 in fantasy points this season. He's averaging 3 touchdowns a game. He's only thrown 1 pick. The Vikings, who they're playing, this could be a shootout. This has got a very high game total. It's 53.5. The Vikings are 11th in fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks. Now, granted, most of that came last week when Jalen Hurts ripped them apart. But the Lions are frisky, and their offense looks like it's working. So, if you are desperate for help at quarterback this week, say you're a Trey Lance manager or a Dak Prescott or a Zach Wilson, Jared Goff might not be the worst option out there.
The Lions are fun. If you can't be good, be fun, right? And the Lions actually might be okay. They're also getting somewhere in the region of a touchdown against the against the Vikings. And yes, I know they're going to be playing them at 6 p.m. UK time, so Kirk Cousins can be an actual quarterback again. But even so, it could be a shootout. I'm with you, Neil. What's the other pick?
The other pick, if you are struggling at tight end, if you're still a frustrated George Kittle manager, or if the sight of Cole Kmet on your roster is driving you to the bottle, then maybe Evan Ingram isn't the worst pick. He's not going to be the tight end 1, I assure you. He's caught 11 of his 13 targets this season. He's caught them. That's fantastic. 91% catch rate is tops among all tight ends. He's only got 76 yards. But PPR. This is what we want. The Chargers, this is where it's a slightly misleading stat. The Chargers are 6th in receptions allowed to tight ends after 2 games this season. They have played Darren Waller and Travis Kelce. But Ingram is commanding an 18.8% share of the targets. So it's Christian Kirk and it's Evan Ingram. And when all we want from tight ends is catch 4 or 5 balls, hopefully average 10 yards or so with them, that'll be fine. If you need a tight end this week, go with Evan Ingram. Good
stuff, Neil. Let's move on and let's find out about who Neil doesn't like with Fantasy Loser. Last week, Neil nailed this pick. Overall, now 1-1. Last week, he picked Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen was wide receiver 54 in 9.2 points PPR. So yeah, that sucks. So yeah, big win for Neil. Neil, who sucks this week?
This week it's Saquon Barkley. I don't think he's going to be a top 12 running back because that offense stinks. They're coming up against the best defense they're going to play. And it's a situation where maybe you'd think a competent quarterback would check it down. So if they're not going to get the ground game going and you're going to continue to phase out your wide receivers or feed your best player, Daniel Jones doesn't do it. He doesn't check down. He still runs. But as I say, at the moment, he looks like he doesn't know what he's doing. So if you're a Saquon Barkley manager, you're going to have to temper your expectations and make sure you're fully blocked up everywhere else along the team.
The nightmare of the Barkley situation is his Monday Night Footy as well, right? Do you know, you're going to be like, oh, I need 9 points. I need 10 points to win this game. And you're like, this is not looking as healthy as I wish it would do, considering I've got someone of the talent, quote unquote, of Saquon Barkley. Let's get on and let's give you our fancy predictions bound to go wrong. We suck at this, and there's a reason, because we go out on a limb. Last week we were 0-2 again, which makes us 0-4. Last week I picked Aaron Rodgers to light up the Chicago Bears for 40 fantasy points. He didn't. He only got 16. Terrible game of football. Absolutely terrible game of football. I don't know if you've seen that video. The Chicago Bears fan crying. You don't need that, mate. It's okay.
It's not your fault.
It's not your fault. Don't worry about it. Neil predicted that Gerald Everett will be tight end 1. He was tight end 8, which is good, but not great, and therefore is a loss. So there we go, 0-2. This week, I will go first. The Cincinnati Bengals offense has not been great. I expect them to get back on track this week. And one of the ways they will get back on track is that Jamar Chase will have over 150 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns against the New York Football Jets. Neil, what's yours?
Mine is fairly simple. The Houston Texans defense and special teams will score more fantasy points than Justin Fields.
Wow. Is that an indictment of Fields, a positivity on the Texans, or both?
I don't know how anyone can make a fair assessment of Justin Fields based on the offense he played last season and whatever the shit show is they're doing now. Unfortunately, the NFL is not fair. It will be held against them in the final analysis. Their offense is putrid. The offensive line talent is CFL reserve level. They don't throw the ball. They've attempted 28 passes. Of
which only 8 of those passes have been ahead of the line of scrimmage.
Yeah. Cole Kmet has not been targeted in 2 games. He was the second option behind Darnell Mooney, who's got an 18% target share, which is like 8 targets himself. Whatever they're doing, it's not offense. It's not modern football. It's pathetic. It makes the Denver Broncos look like a slick operation. Which I don't really want to get into that because I ranted at that the other day with someone else and I got it out of my system and I feel better for it. And I just think...
While you were ranting, was someone counting behind you 10, 9, 8, like the whole of the effing Denver Stadium?
Village. Absolute village. But anyway, the Texans aren't great, but the Bears will beat themselves. So...
This week, the Atlanta Falcons play the Seattle Seahawks and the Chicago Bears play the Houston Texans. I wish Scott Hansen all the luck in the world trying to make me excited when he tells me he's going to one of those games.
Punt zone.
Just absolutely awful games of American football. Neil, that's it for the show. Great stuff as always. Before we're back next week, where can people catch you?
Follow me on Twitter at @endupton13. You've got the Super Bowl odds tracker at Number Fire. You've got the tight end report on Rotoviz. You've got the pace of play report, which I call Speed Freaks and Slow Coaches on Roto Underworld. You've got my matchups for the Jaguars against the Chargers, which was easy this week because they're playing each other. That's on 4for4 Football. And also you've got 3 fantasy darlings on the Nat Coombs Show on the podcast, and also I believe on the radio as well. Fantastic
stuff. For those who haven't yet, please check out the Touchdown Review podcast for the touchdown.co.uk. You get to listen to me again, and don't let that stop you. You also get to hear from Callum, Thomas, Taib and Joe talking many things. This week we talked Fun Lions, we talked Kenny Pickett starting, we talked Dallas Cowboys, and Callum got to do a victory lap because his favourite 2 players in the league are Tua and Kyler Murray. So, got to get involved in that. Head over to the touchdown.co.uk, give it a read. Some great articles up there at the moment. If you're a college fan, just kind of that kind of idea. Every week, George Somerville does an article called Saturday in Athens. It's absolutely must read if you're bracing yourself to find out what's going on in the SEC. Absolutely would 100% recommend it. That is it for this week. Thank you very much. We hope you enjoyed the show, and these top guys are out.